Hi, I'm Stu from Hive Automation, and this is the 7 deadly sins of smart home manufacturers. So while I roll the intro, why don't you take a moment to subscribe? And if you hit the bell icon, you'll get a notification when I release new videos each week. While you're at it, you can check out the affiliate links in the video description to buy smart home gadgets and support the channel at the same time. There's other ways to support the channel there too, like supporting the channel directly using my Buy Me a Coffee link. Those affiliate links and my Buy Me a Coffee link can also be found on my website, hivemindautomation.com.au. With all of that out of the way, let's get started. So a few weeks ago, I made a 7 deadly smart home sins video, and it got me thinking about the 7 deadly sins that smart home gadget manufacturers commit. With so many different gadgets from so many different manufacturers on the market, I wanted to take a look at some of the bad, unethical, and in some cases downright evil practices in the industry. These are my opinions. So there's a good chance that yours will differ. But let's get stuck into them. Now, for me, deadly sin number 1 is a lack of support and/or updates. One of the dangers of the Internet of Things is that manufacturers can put out a product and that's it. That's where it ends. The product never receives a software update, so the original firmware with all of its potentially vulnerable code never gets patched. Unless you've got an advanced home network, these IoT devices are also sitting on the same network as your computers, phones, and tablets, etc. Now, in the event that a hacker compromises your unpatched light bulb, smart switch, or air conditioner, they can then either use that device as part of a botnet to perform distributed denial of service or DDoS attacks against larger targets, or use their access inside your network to then pivot around and gain access to your computers, phones, or tablets connected to the same Wi-Fi, and then add those to their botnet or gain access to your personal data. Now, for the most part, this only applies to Wi-Fi only devices, but there's still a chance that Zigbee, Thread, or Z-Wave devices could also be compromised. So manufacturers who don't support and frequently update the firmware on their devices are committing a deadly sin. For sin number 2, and it kind of builds a little bit on the lack of support, but I'll separate this one out into poor standards integration. Unless you're new to the channel, you'll know that I make use of Home Assistant to orchestrate my smart home gadgets from different manufacturers. And the whole reason that I got into Home Assistant was because of a lack of standards for controlling my smart home. Home Assistant helps me to bridge the gap created by a lack of standards by orchestrating all of these different manufacturers' gadgets on one platform. I'm still very hopeful that Matter, the new smart home standard, will make a big difference here. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to stop using Home Assistant, but Matter compatibility should theoretically massively simplify the integration of new gadgets into my smart home. When I learned that Belkin had paused development on Matter support for their Wemo line of smart home gadgets, I was honestly disgusted. If I hadn't already boycotted Belkin products for other reasons, this news would have 100% sealed Belkin's fate in my eyes as not being worth my money. Similarly, Nanoleaf are skating on thin ice, having made the decision not to add Matter support to their existing range and provide backwards compatibility, instead having it be a new line of products. And they still don't seem to be available in Australia, but I will still be getting some of the Nanoleaf Essentials Matter bulbs in as soon as I can to take a look at them. Honestly, if it weren't for some of the other features that I really quite like about the Nanoleaf range, they would also be on the scrap heap for that decision. There's plenty of Matter content coming up in the next little while, so be sure to subscribe if you want to see that. Sin number 3 is a bad user experience. Now, again, you could argue that that falls into sins 1 and 2. In the recent episodes about the Wiz ecosystem, specifically the Wiz smart plug, it was clear from the Wiz app that it was designed for lights and absolutely zero thought had been put into the user experience for the smart plug. And that was in their own app, not even a third-party integration. In fact, the Home Assistant integration was a better experience for an end user than their own native app. Now, these kinds of user experiences really demonstrate that either the product was rushed to the market or the manufacturer's quality assurance department has no attention to detail, which for me is cause for alarm. Quality assurance problems are likely the reason that my Wiz motion sensor just plain didn't work. Worse than that still, it could demonstrate that the manufacturer just doesn't actually care about their user experience. And this isn't just about the software user experience either. The hardware experience can be subpar as well. Either poor quality control or just plain poor industrial design, like crowding buttons, making them hard to push, or worse still, not including buttons when there absolutely should be buttons. These are all bad user experiences. The best example I have of this is things like the smart power boards with only one button that toggles all of the ports at once, or smart switches with no physical button at all. Sure, the app or third-party integration allows for individual switching, but prioritizing smart control and providing no physical control for the sake of saving a couple of cents on your bill of materials is just plain short-sighted. Sin number 4, and I'm honestly surprised I didn't get to this sooner, outrageous pricing. For this sin, I'm going to pick on smart locks specifically. Although it's not a sin exclusive to smart lock manufacturers, for some reason, lock manufacturers specifically seem to add a ridiculous markup to make their products smart. For example, a Schlage single-cylinder deadbolt is available from $74.59 from Amazon Australia. The cheapest Schlage smart lock that I could find on Amazon is $435. The same for Kwikset. A regular deadbolt is $42 on Amazon. The cheapest Kwikset smart deadbolt I could find is $321. Now, before you start raging in the comments section, the threshold to be considered smart in my book is some form of connectivity. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee, Z-Wave, Thread, or otherwise. Without connectivity, it might be clever by providing a PIN pad or smart card entry, but I don't consider it to be smart until it can be connected to the rest of my smart home and controlled remotely. Now, I can't blame companies for wanting to make a profit. That's the point of capitalism. But prices like this will either serve as a barrier to adoption or give their customers a false sense of security because they paid nearly 8 times as much, so it must be 8 times more secure. Which leads me neatly to another problem with smart locks, and I feel like I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but it's been demonstrated by fellow YouTuber and every physical security manufacturer's worst nightmare, the lockpicking lawyer. In several videos where he's looked at smart locks, he demonstrates that they are, in some cases, actually less secure than locks without smart functionality, either through easy-to-exploit design flaws in the electronics or housing, or the cylinder of the lock lacking even the most fundamental attempts at hardening, with bypasses to the lock possible in a matter of seconds. Now, obviously, that's at least hopefully not the case for all smart locks, and I do intend to get at least one smart lock in at some point in the future. Let me know your thoughts on smart locks in the comments. Leaving smart locks alone for a moment, the pricing model for some other smart products do seem a little outrageous as well. I've discussed Eve Home before, and while they're thread-enabled accessories, $70 for a contact sensor and nearly $80 for a motion sensor, and then $70 again for a smart switch is hard to justify. Again, if these companies are going to charge premium prices, they also need to provide a demonstrably better product than cheaper competitors, either in feature set, design, or compatibility. On to sin number 5 now, and that is a lack of regional support. It's extremely disappointing when smart home manufacturers announce all these really cool gadgets and then don't release them globally. More to the point though, in Australia. On the smart lock front again, and I don't mean to pick on smart locks so much this episode, but the level lock, which looks like it has some truly excellent features, including support for Apple's Home Key, where you can unlock your door using your NFC on your iPhone, similar to using Apple Pay, all enclosed in what looks like a standard deadbolt, still isn't available in Australia, and it's been more than 6 months since it launched. There's no change to availability, and even if and when it does change, I dread to think how much it's going to cost. Grey market imports of the level lock will run you $799 plus another $80 postage from the US, and that was the best price I could find on eBay because there's only 2 listings. Here's hoping that the manufacturer doesn't want that much if and when it is finally released here. For sin number 6, proprietary technologies. Now again, I feel like this could be covered by things like lack of support and lack of standards adoption, but in spite of several connectivity standards being well established, some smart home manufacturers are still including proprietary communications protocols to control their devices. The first that comes to mind is the previously reviewed Holman WX1 smart tap to turn water on and off. The starter kit came with a bridge that doubled as a smart plug, and then that bridge communicates with the smart tap over a 915 megahertz radio frequency communication link. They didn't even have the decency to make use of the more well-established, though well and truly legacy, 933 megahertz RF protocols. Another example is a smart alarm siren that I got that was supposed to run on a standard 933 megahertz protocol, but couldn't be paired with anything other than its own proprietary alarm controller. This also extends to third-party interactions too, where the manufacturer's app gets fully local control of the device, but any third-party integration is forced via the cloud. Yes, I'm looking at you, Tuya. I'm sure there's other examples out there in the wild, so let me know if you've seen any yourself in the comments section below. Okay, last but by no means least, sin number 7, and that is inconsistent execution. Again, this to some degree comes back to bad support, but it's extremely frustrating to have multiple devices from the same manufacturer that seem like they were designed by completely different companies. For example, a completely different industrial design language between different devices, like for example, a rounded square temperature sensor and a circular button, or the UI in the native app looking completely different from device to device. But this also extends to things like APIs and third-party integrations as well. While I'm always thrilled to get access to a local API, it's extremely frustrating to not have the entire device exposed via the API, or even worse, different devices from the same manufacturer, where one has API access that may even be good API access, and another device from the same manufacturer has either no access or very poor access. I'll pick on Tuya again here, especially as they provide the brains for a ton of white label gadgets. Our multiple Tuya-based smart switches all have either cloud or local APIs that are relatively easy to access. In fairness, the local API access is probably considered a hack by Tuya, but that's beside the point. But then we look at something like our cat feeder. For whatever reason, there's no access to the cat feeder using the API, local or cloud, unless you create a scene in the Tuya app and then have that come through the cloud connected API, and then you just trigger that scene. Why I can't access the trigger pin on the microcontroller unit that's inside there from the API just boggles my mind. And worse still, there's no access to the camera feed from the cat feeder at all. In fact, from what I've seen, there's no access to the Mirabella Genio camera feed from the API either. Only some random camera settings, which are basically just switches that are exposed on the API for the cat feeder as well. The robot vacuum is another example where the API only exposes play and stop commands. A cleaning mode configuration which only appears to have smart as an option despite there being several more controls in the app. And that's the cloud API, which I'd expect to be the least restrictive of the two, considering the local API, as I mentioned, is a hack. There's no access to the map. You can't define restricted areas outside of the native app, which is also not a good user experience, by the way. And ideally, I'd also like it to expose some sensor values, things like the battery percentage, etc., but I digress. On the topic of the robot vacuum cleaner, there is an update coming up on that one soon, so get subscribed if you don't want to miss out on that. So at least in my opinion, those are the 7 deadly sins that are committed by smart home manufacturers. Do you agree, or did I get it wrong? Let me know in the comments section below. That's all we have for this video, and I do hope that it helped you in your smart home journey. Be sure to comment down below with home automation ideas you'd like to see me cover in a future video, and don't forget to follow HiveMind Automation on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. If you liked this video, hit the thumbs up button down below to give it a like, and if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing now. While you're at it, if you hit the bell icon to get notified when I release new videos each week, you'll get that notification. Lastly, if you like what I'm doing here and you want to support the channel, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Contributions that you make through Buy Me a Coffee get put towards making more and hopefully better content for you to enjoy. Links to social media, affiliate links to gadgets, and Buy Me a Coffee can all be found on my website, hivemindautomation.com.au. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Stu from HiveMind Automation, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.